All right, Bronco Nation, I've got a long drive back for me. I have a 6-hour drive here, driving back to Northwest Florida. You can hear my voice is gone from yelling at the game. And I got to talk about it. I got to talk about the game. I got to get it off my chest. I got to have someone, you're my traveling companion as we make this drive back here. I won't keep you with me the whole time. But I got to talk a little bit about it. I'll do a full review of the game when I get my voice back. But we need to talk about what happened. That was a tough game, and you could tell both teams were adjusting. That new coach, first game of the season, obviously UCF adjusting to Gus Malzahn, and Boise State adjusting to Andy Avalos. And both teams really seemed to be trying to find themselves. UCF found themselves a little bit faster, and they won the game. UCF, if UCF hadn't kept shooting themselves in the foot, they might have won by a lot more. Boise State got lucky a few drives there with holding penalties or bad interceptions, but Boise State really looked like a team that was struggling to find an identity. Of course, Tim Plow, guy coming from UC Davis, air raid style offense is what he ran there, what he likes to run, air raid style guy. And you could really see the conflict between his offensive vision and Boise State and what they are. Boise State has always been a balanced attack. We're not Washington State. We're not some of these other teams that just go out and throw the ball 40 times a game. We are a balanced team that runs the ball to develop the pass and passes the ball to develop the run. We're an even balanced team. But Tim Plow, he really wants to push us in that, kind of pass-heavy attack. And when we were doing the pass, it looked great today. When we got into that rhythm of the passing game, we were throwing it all over the field. Receivers that barely caught any passes last season, like Billy Bowens, Stephon Cobbs, I would say Rice Smith, but he was involved last year. But receivers, we threw it all over the field. We must have had 6 or 7 receivers make receptions. 87, the tight end. I got to get his name down, but he was playing great. We had some great receivers over there. When we were throwing the ball, we were getting rhythm. We looked great. It was when we started trying to push on the run game, pretty much that entire second half. That's when we started to fall apart, and that's what I'm talking about. It looked like Boise State was trying to find that identity, was trying to find who they are now, and they wanted to keep developing the run game. Well, there was a couple things wrong with that. First off, we were missing Helani, our number 1 running back. And while I have big hopes for Cyrus, and I hope that Van Buren can take a step forward in his development this season, neither of them compared to Helani with his cutting ability, his speed, his breakaway speed, and his ability to participate in the pass game as an awesome receiver or a running back who can also catch. And we just didn't see that out of, well, first off, we didn't see it out of Van Buren or Cyrus today. But the second big thing was that the line wasn't blocking for them. So it might not even matter if Helani was in the game because there was no line block for the run. Now, the pass rush offensive line, as far as protecting for the pass, looked pretty good. Hank Bachmeier was under pressure a little bit there. But, he didn't get hit as much as he did. I think the only sack that he took was on the play that he fumbled the ball. Like I said, I haven't pre-gamed this. I'm just speaking off the heart. So the play that he fumbled it and then he got sacked, I think that was it. But besides that, he looked like he had time in the pocket for the most part. And, besides that last drive where he got pushed out of it, of course, and threw short, he looked like he had plenty of time. It was when we ran the ball that we looked totally out of rhythm. And I just don't understand. After a first half where we were throwing the ball all over the field, we looked explosive, we looked dynamic, and we come out in the second half and we just run the ball on first down every play for like 5 drives. Maybe it was 4 drives. For like 4 or 5 drives. And we just looked completely stagnant. I couldn't understand. It looked like a completely different team out there. We ran, and the run wasn't working. We had, I think, when I looked up at the board last, we had 20 yards rushing. That has got to be, and I'll look up the stats when I do my review video, but that's got to be the least amount of rushing yards that Boise State has ever had in a game. There's no way that we have ever rushed for 20 yards before. That's just mind-boggling. I mean, this is a team that 11 years in a row, if you don't count the COVID year, but 11 years before 2020, had churned out a 1,000-yard rusher every single season. And like I said, I don't know if Helani and his breakaway ability and his speed would have made a difference in getting, but the running backs were getting hit in the backfield before they could even take a step forward. So, Helani has that ability to break through tackles and juke his way around and go for a distance. So we might have had a little bit more of an impact. but it would have been still tough. It would have been a tough ground attack game today because we just couldn't run. And it's not that UCF has an outstanding defensive line. They do have a good defense. But the thing was, we just didn't have any. For one thing was the fact that our blockers couldn't block for us. And the second thing was the run plays made no sense. We kept trying to do these long stretch plays to the outside, which didn't make any sense with UCF's speed. Or we were just trying to do a dive up the middle. We weren't being creative with it. One thing we were really missing from this game, something that we saw last season used to high effect, was using the wide receivers in the run game. Using the wide receivers on wide receiver sweeps. That was so effective. I don't even want to start talking about the lack of not utilizing Shakir when we were doing that run, pass kind of play. Shakir had like 2 touches in the first half, and then he looked great in that last quarter when we were pushing for the game. But we didn't use him at all in between. Where was he? Why wasn't he in the game? Why wasn't he? Or he was in the game, but why weren't we using him in the offense? And I'm just talking about just throwing some screens to him or something is better than trying to run it up the middle when they have proven to us that we can't run it up the middle. Why are we still trying to push to run the ball up the middle when we are going nowhere? And then on third down, yeah, it's third and long, but a draw play or another run up the middle is going to get you nothing. Velasquez has been doing a great job. I'll talk about special teams here in a second, but he had an amazing job punting. So he's been doing a good job punting for us. So 6 yards or less that you're going to get on a run play isn't going to make much difference. Go for that first down. I don't care if it's 3rd and 15, and most of the time it wasn't even that. It was like 3rd and 10, and I don't care that you're on your side of the 20. Just throw it up there. We've got some speed. UCF's got speed, but so do we. Shakir's got speed. Evans got speed. Cobb's got speed. He looked great today. We got speed on the outside. We can throw it up there or at least get us something that will give us a shot. Run play, the fact that they're stopping us running in the first place isn't going to get us anything. You are conceding at that point. And when you've already wasted your first down because you just ran up the middle, it was like every down. We had like 2 downs because we just wasted the first one. It's like it didn't even happen. So you've already wasted the first down. And the third down, if it's longer than 10 yards, you're just going to run it anyway. So that gets you 1 down to make a play. And yeah, there were some drop balls out there. Big one, C.T. Thomas on that 3rd and long where he was wide open and it was a good pass from Hank and he hit him in the hands and he just dropped it. And that would have been huge for establishing some momentum and maybe going down and scoring. So, there were some drop balls, but the big thing was the play calling. It made no sense. The drives that Boise State went out and scored and won and scored on were called completely different. It's not that Boise State played differently, that the players on the field played differently on those drives. It's that they were called completely differently. Instead of trying to run the ball, we were just getting out there and passing. And maybe that's who we are right now. Maybe that's who we got to be. We got to lock in one way or the other. You got to play to your strengths. And what I saw today was an incredibly deep wide receiver core. I mean, our top 3 receivers, besides Shakir towards the end there, were barely even utilized because the depth was so good. C.T. Thomas barely targeted at all. Octavius Evans only targeted a few times. Shakir used sparingly, but Cobbs had a great game. He was all over the field. I'm forgetting his name. I think it's number 18. But we had depth. We had players all over the place that we were hitting. They were going to, and it looked great. So that's what we just needed to stick to. We needed to stick to that pass game and keep developing on that. And it's something that I'm going to want. I want Andy Avalos. He owes that to us as the fans to explain what happened there. Because the Boise State fans that were at the game, we couldn't understand it. We were just completely mind-boggled. Bowens, that's the guy, the wide receiver I couldn't remember. He played great today. Anyhow, we just couldn't believe what was happening in front of our eyes. Our Boise State offense that had the capability to be so explosive with a quarterback, the Hank Bachmeier, who's got some great skill with him and great receivers, just completely stagnant. And it wasn't that UCF shut us up. It was the play calling. So, the one silver lining in this, I guess, is the special teams. the special teams, besides the snap over the head of Velasquez into the end zone for a safety, which in the grand scheme of things didn't really matter anyway as far as the score goes. Besides that, though, I mean, Velasquez, you know he struggled. You know, he's coming to his senior year. And I think he might have one more year of eligibility because of COVID. But he's coming into his final year here, potentially. And he has struggled in the past. You know, memorably, the kick off the up man against, I think it was Utah State in the first game. But he's always had a leg. He just hasn't had consistency. He's always had a couple punts that went like 50 and then a couple punts that went like 30, shanks or blocks or whatever. But today, he was amazing. He was clutch. And, you know, if you watched my videos where I kind of reviewed this season, I told you that Velasquez was going to have an amazing year this year because at the end of last season, he looked hot. He finally looked like he developed himself. He finally looked like he was moving in the right direction. And he had a couple 60-yard punts. He had a punt that was almost blocked. You know, he's coming under so much pressure, and he still got it away. Every single time he got it past the 50. It was amazing out there. Thomas, of course, great game for him. I was talking to his parents before the game. That was a nice thing about getting to drive up to UCF, get to go see a lot of the players' parents that I don't get to meet. A lot of Boise State fans, you know, with my line of work and being stationed down here in Florida. So it was nice getting to go see a lot of you guys. Thanks for coming out, Bronco Nation. Reese showed up. There were a lot of fans there. You know, we were loud. We were loud that whole game. But I was talking to Dom's parents before the game, and they were saying that he was talking about having some concerns because this is, you think about it, this is a red shirt, a sophomore, true sophomore, who walked onto the team last year after not being involved in football for 2 years because he's on his LDS mission, and who's never kicked in front of a crowd. You know, I think we had a couple games last year where we had, you know, a few people there, but he has never cooked in front of a crowd of this capacity or even Boise State can offer. And he was nervous. It's understandable, you know, especially the crowd noise plays the most impact, I think, on the kicker and their head. I mean, that's where you can, as a fan, you really make a difference. And he went out there and he looked clutch. He made all his extra points, even the one that got false started on. He had to kick from a little further out. And he made a 31-yard field goal. It's straight down the middle. He has missed automatic. I've said this before, I think he's going to be the best kicker in Boise State history if he keeps up what he's been doing so far and he stays all 4 years and develops that legacy. He is amazing. If we can always rely on him to get us points if we're within 50-something yards. I mean, this is a kid who's incredible, and it was great to meet his parents as well. I want to talk about a couple of silver linings here, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what we need to fix going forward. So the other silver lining, like I said, was the depth of the receiver corps stepping up. That was great to see. The defense, we allowed them to put up 36 points on us, and we lost the game. And the defense looked porous, but they didn't look as bad as they did last season. This is still a defense that is trying to find their unity, that has a lot of players in there. But oh my goodness, Tyreek LaBeouf, what a player. 2 interceptions. I believe Boise State only had 2 interceptions all last season. I'd have to look up the stat. But he had 2 picks in this game, which I think is the same amount of picks that Boise State had last season. First got Boise State on the board with that pick 6, 100-yard return. He looked amazing. Number 30, I got to meet his parents. I'm not going to try to attempt his name. Starts with a B. I totally messed it up. But number 30 linebacker had 2 sacks on Gabriel's. I think he was the only Boise player. Actually, no, we had a few other sacks, but he was always pressuring the quarterback. He looked great. So we had a couple silver linings there. But, you know, the defensive line could not stop UCF, no matter what they were doing. You know, UCF really should have put a lot more points on us if they hadn't shot themselves in the foot. You know, if they hadn't had the holding calls and the interceptions, they would have scored a lot more points than they ended up doing. And any time that Gabriel's took the ball, now he is a special player. He is very good now in decision making as far as passing the ball. A little iffy today on a couple of throws. I think that's just about him developing. But you know, it looked like when you develop a player in NCAA football and you put him on like 99, and then you're just messing with your brother. You're playing him, and he keeps trying to tackle you, and you're just running around. I mean, Boise State, they got to him a few times, but he every time managed to wiggle out of it. It was a little bit like watching Josh Allen. I mean, he's just able to get out of there so fast and run the ball. Honestly, if UCF had just done quarterback sneak and handoff to Bowser every play, they would have scored on every drive because Boise could not stop Bowser. He got about 4 or 5 yards every single touch, and they could not stop Gabriel's. Anytime he wanted to take the ball, it was pretty much there, especially just right up the middle, pretty much. Clear the receivers, just clear out, and he could just run. I think he had well over 100 yards rushing. So this is a UCF team that's going to be very good, and it's a team that Boise State really struggled against. And if Boise State wants to come out and make an impact in the Mountain West this year, they have got to figure out the struggles in the defensive line. I thought the secondary played pretty well. Our pass defense played really well. Interceptions, pass deflections, it looked great. And the linebacker core looked okay, especially number 30. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not going to try his name because I know I'll mess it up. But number 30 looked good. But the defensive line looked like butter. I mean, every single time they couldn't keep contained. They couldn't get to the quarterback, and they couldn't stop the running back. I don't know why Boise State wasn't running a spy or a blitzer on every single play. Because, it doesn't matter how many guys you got back in the secondary. If you give Gabriel the amount of time he had today, they're going to find somebody, and he did. Boise State should have been sending a blitzer or a quarterback spy. So either you go and you get him before he can run, or you stand back in case he can run. And I just don't understand what Boise State's defensive game plan was for this. They kind of looked unprepared a little bit, and there's no excuse for that. I mean, this was a team that played the same offense they did last season, and they looked good. And so, I'm hoping that UCF goes out and just crushes every team by like 30 points the rest of the year, and it turns out that it's a little bit of better loss than it is. And don't get me wrong, UCF is a good team, and they won this game fair and square. But there were a lot of things that Boise State did in this game that were uncharacteristic of the Broncos. And if they want to come out and they want to have a good year this year, and they want to win that Mountain West Championship game, because, the way they played against UCF, they're going to drop games this season. They're not going to get past BYU. They're not going to get past Nevada. They're not going to get past, San Diego State, maybe Fresno State. They're going to drop a lot of games if they don't fix the issues that we saw tonight. And I said that. In my previews of the season. I said this could be a year where we go 10-2, or this could be a year that we go 8-4. Oklahoma State, tougher team than UCF. That's only a couple weeks away. And then we play a very tough schedule in the Mountain West this year. So, Boise State fans, there's still a lot to look forward to. Indianapolis is going to get there eventually in developing this team and finding their chemistry. But they've got to find themselves. They got to find out what it is that this Boise State team is made of, and what their chemistry is. What this team is. Are they a balanced attack? If they're a balanced attack, they got to work on the rushing game. Or are they a pass-heavy offense? And I'm fine with that. I don't need to have a 1,000-yard rusher as a Boise State fan if it leads to wins. We can win in a pass-heavy offense because we got the quarterbacks for it. Hank Bachmeier and Jack Sears are great quarterbacks. Hank Bachmeier struggled a little bit today. For the most part, he was online, but he made some questionable decisions. He threw a couple passes that were too high. He should have hit Riley Smith twice for touchdowns that he threw too high. And he had a couple of receivers that he just threw out, just too far out of them. And, of course, that just boneheaded decision on the last play. I'll talk about that in a second here. But just kind of reviewing the team overall here, if Boise State wants to go out and get the wins, they need to find out who they are. And I think they're a pass-heavy offense that needs to lean hard into that, at least until Helani gets back in the game and involved, and maybe even beyond that. Helani can be involved in the pass game. He's good in the receiving. So I think they need to go kind of a Washington State style. That's what Tim Plow is, and he needs to lean into it versus trying to mess around with the past. This is the threat that you attack the future, right? Don't try to lean in the past, attack the future. And the Boise State, we can evolve and continue to develop, and maybe that's what we need to reestablish ourselves as a top group of 5 team. We need to look different than we have in the past 4 or 5 years. So real quick, just want to talk about that last play, Hank Bachmeier coming down, not last play, but last drive. We've got the ball. We forced a stop on 4th and 1. We're pushing. We've thrown it to Shakir, who's gotten us down past the 50. And it's third and like 2. And Hank Bachmeier runs outside. And instead of just putting his nose down and seeing what he can get, he throws it across his body to a double-covered receiver and he underthrows it because he's throwing it across his body. We're running out of bounds, and it gets picked. Of course, I mean, as soon as he let go of that ball, in fact, as he was running, I was like, just run, just go out of bounds, just go out of bounds. And then he threw it, and I just couldn't believe it. And I knew he was going to get picked as soon as he threw it. And I think what happened in Bachmeier's brain is that he thought that he had to get the first down on that play. He wasn't thinking that, you know, you're in 4-down territory. He put his nose down, maybe get the first down, or get within a couple inches and live to fight the next day. And I think that's symptomatic of a quarterback who is playing in his first game this season. So he's kind of, you know, and a quarterback who never really got to get into a groove last season because of being out with the COVID and everything like that. So it's a quarterback who's trying to find himself again. It's a quarterback who's very talented, but it's a quarterback who tries to do too much sometimes. And the coaches need to let him know that sometimes enough is enough. You take what you can get and you push forward and you try to live to fight another day. Because, you know, a couple of inches and Boise State could have got that, and they could have pushed down and won that football game. And it really comes down to that. It comes down to the little mistakes here and there, the little errors. And Andy Avalos is a good enough coach with a good enough team around him that I think he's going to take this Boise State team. They're going to take a hard look at themselves. They're going to reevaluate. They're going to find their center, their center of self, and they're going to come back stronger next week. And they're going to beat UTEP. That should be a guaranteed win. And then they're going to go. Oklahoma State's going to come to Boise, and that's going to be that point in the season. Is this a team that is back to being a top team in their conference and in the group of 5? Or is this a team that's going to have a couple of rough years while they find themselves? And I think we're going to find that here in a couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to the next week's game against UTEP. I think Boise State should use that game. As UTEP, you know, they're not a great team. It shouldn't be too hard. Don't overlook them. You know, anybody can beat anybody. Don't overlook them. But it's a team where Boise State can tune themselves out, can tune things up. Not tune themselves up, but tune things up and find out what they need to do to move forward. And then go in and play at Oklahoma State. And even if they lose that game, if they can at least play them in a way that makes it look like a competent football team. Because what I saw out of Boise State today, I saw a team that was lucky, a team that should have been beat by a lot more than they did because UCF was struggling. So it's a team that needs to prove that they have what it takes, that they're attacking the future and not trying to lean in the past. This is a team that needs to prove that, and we just didn't see that today. So, you know, moving forward, they need to find their center again. They need to change. I'm sorry I'm rambling a little bit. Usually I have these a little more scripted, but they need to find their center. They need to find what they are, and I think they're pass every time. They need to lean into that, and the defense needs to find a way to tighten up that defensive line. That is going to be where Boise State hangs their hat. Everything else can come after the run game, you know, the play calling. We can figure that out down the road, but that defensive line has got to be better because it doesn't matter what kind of plays you're calling on offense. If the other team's scoring every time you do, you're probably going to lose that game anyway. So the Boise State, find their center, fix the defensive line. That's my 2 big keys for this next week here. All right, I'm going to, as far as my voice recovers, I'll make my actual official review video. It won't be as rambling and all over the place as this one was. But thanks for being my therapist there a little bit, getting a little bit of chance to get that out. It needed to be said. And I'm excited to see what Boise State does this next week. Season's not over, guys. Season's not over. You know, we got 11 more games. It's a long season. And Boise State has a chance, even if they don't go out. I mean, the New Year's Six is probably off the table unless something happens. You know, it's not in Boise State's hands anymore. But that doesn't matter. Boise State can still go out and have a great season. The Mountain West Conference Championship game, that title is still on the line. Boise State can still go out and get that. And they can have a year in a rebuilding year where they still go out and have a great season and set up for a great year next year. So Boise State, attack the future. And as always, go Big Blue.